Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show, a Monday afternoon episode. Hope everybody had a great weekend. I'm just getting back from a trip to Las Vegas, actually, with my dad and our good family friends. So that was a lot of fun. We'll tell a couple stories from that during the full episode that we're recording later tonight with Jack, Zach, Ziggy. The whole gang will be here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the NFL Combine, some of the big rumors going around the NFL right now. Again, this is one of my favorite times of year where you never really know what to believe, and everyone's speculating on whether big name stars are on the move, what NFL draft trades are going to happen. It's always a great time in March. And then, of course, you have the NCAA tournament come around. It's getting a little warmer. Days get a little bit longer. You should be spring ahead on the clock, so that's nicer. This is a really fun time of year right here. And there are a couple of really fun NFC North stories that we're going to dive into today, specifically around the Packers, Vikings, and Bears at the moment. A little bit of Lions talk at the end. We'll probably hit everything a little bit more in the full episode later tonight. Again, if you're enjoying these videos, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It really, really means a lot to us when you hit that subscribe button. And we always appreciate seeing comments. Again, we see all of them, but sometimes we can't respond to every single one. Right now, there is a mailbag community post that's up right now. So feel free to head over there with any comments or questions. Could be about anything. We're going to try and hit that either later tonight or on the Wednesday recording. So please feel free to head over to the community page, submit your question, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can. Of course, if you're a member to the channel, we will answer that question no matter what. You can go to our channel homepage to become a member, select join. And appreciate everyone who's been a member throughout this time. It's been a lot of fun, and we're going to have more competitions, I promise. I know people are probably waiting on them. There'll be more competitions, more prizes coming. We're kind of settling into our off-season plans right now. So why don't we jump into this here? The Packers and what's going on with them, some of the trade rumors. Because I'm out in Las Vegas, and I looked out my phone, and all of a sudden I see the Green Bay Packers are interested in DK Metcalf. And I go, DK Metcalf. Okay, I kind of need to collect my thoughts on where I stand on DK Metcalf right now. He's coming off a sub 1,000 yard season, and a little unfair for me to say sub 1,000. He's 992, so really close, but sub 1,000. A little disappointing after a hot start to the year. How is DK Metcalf perceived in the NFL right now? I think it's a little different than it was a few seasons ago, where he was, by everyone's accounts, one of the top receivers in football. And I think he probably still is. But even on his own team last year, Jackson Smith and Jigba outperformed him. He became more of the guy and looks like the future in Seattle. So DK Metcalf, at the current moment, I'm looking at the different reports here. It's because it's been kind of bouncing all over the place, whether or not he's actually available or not. And Corbin K. Smith from the Emerald City Spectrum, he said that he was hearing Green Bay offering early selection in the draft and a young receiver for DK. He wound up clarifying that was either Dontavian Wicks or Romeo Doubs. And I think for the Packers, that's smart to not. Jaden Reed should not be the guy there. And the number 23 pick in the first round of the draft this year. That's a lot for DK Metcalf, who's only 27 years old, but that's a pretty heavy haul. We'll get to that in a second and what that means. Peter Bukowski of The Leap confirmed the report from Corbin Smith and said that he is hearing that and that the Packers are going to try to trade Jair Alexander to recoup some of the lost draft capital if that trade were to go down. Again, we did the show last week on Jair Alexander. I don't think he's going to get traded. He's probably going to get released. And any smart team in the league will see that that's the path the Packers and Jair are on. So already a couple confusing signals there, and maybe not exactly how this is going to take place. Matt Scheidman of The Athletic comes out, goes, there's been no contact or negotiations between the two sides. And that was further emphasized by Jeff Howe, his colleague at The Athletic, who said it doesn't sound likely the Seahawks would make DK Metcalf available in a trade. So you got those four reporters, two of them on one side, two of them on the other. And the more you Google DK Metcalf right now, the current story today is it seems like he's not planning on being moved. But you have to kind of take everything with a grain of salt this time of year. Again, this is what I was talking about in the very beginning of the show. In March, April, the NFL, so many smoke screens are going around. That's a word that you've heard a million times in football in the offseason. It's one you're going to hear a million more times this offseason. A lot of smoke screens going around. No one really knows what's true and what's not. But one thing I do know that's true is that everybody has a price. Everybody. You would be willing to trade DK Metcalf if you're the Seahawks for the right price. John Schneider was saying that it was news to him that DK was going to be traded, but I'm sure that behind closed doors, there are some conversations going on. That I would be really surprised if there have not been some phone calls, especially between the Packers and Seattle, about DK Metcalf heading to Green Bay. Now, getting that out there, that it's on the table. I don't like, just because a couple guys came out and said it's not, doesn't mean that it's not being talked about. What should Green Bay give up for DK Metcalf? That would be the question. And do they want him? As far as do they want him, I think the answer would be yes. Again, only 27 years old. He feels older than that, DK. Maybe just because he looks like an older dude and he's been in the league now for a while. But he's going to be 28 in December of this year. So you get the age 27 season, still right up there, I would say, towards the end of his prime. Again, a down year this season, but Geno hasn't been very good. Seahawks struggled, new emerging receiver. In Green Bay, he would be the undoubted number one on that team with Jordan Love, who I think is a better quarterback and a better offensive system in Green Bay. So I definitely think that DK Metcalf checks that box of, all right, this guy's good enough. We talked about getting T. Higgins, talked about Devontae Adams. DK Metcalf is in that conversation for someone. My dad was saying, I was talking with my dad about it, and he said he doesn't really scare me anymore. I don't think DK Metcalf scares me. I know he doesn't scare me in the same realm of the Jamar Chases and the Justin Jeffersons and the top dog receivers who he was in that conversation. I mean, he was always tier 2, but he was close to those top guys a few seasons ago. Now I think you're starting to see more separation. But on any given day, DK Metcalf can take over. I feel like it's always against me in fantasy. So he's still in that conversation of one of the best in the league. Now you talk about what you have to trade to get him. And I'm just looking here at the wide receivers who've been traded in the last 12 months. Here's what they've received as far as draft compensation. Deebo Samuel, fifth round selection. Mike Williams, 5th. DeAndre Hopkins, 5th. Jerry Jeudy, who was one of the league leaders in receiving yards this year, 5th and 6th. Jonathan Mingo, 7th and 4th. Devontae Adams, a 3rd. Amari Cooper, a 6th, a 3rd, and a 7th. And then continue it on. Stephon Diggs, a 5th, a 6th, and a 2nd. So you see that there, no first round picks. And the asking price that we saw Corbin K. Smith wrote was Dontavian Wicks / Romeo Doubs, one of those two guys, and a first round selection, number 23 in the draft. And of those guys I mentioned, I know Devontae Adams is a little older, so getting a 3rd round pick for him, already pretty good. You had the 2nd in there with Stephon Diggs. Jerry Jeudy was not perceived as highly as DK Metcalf is right now at this point in time. So it's understandable to say, all right, those guys have their own situations, different stories, different reason for them being a lower pick than a first rounder. But I do think if you're sending over a guy like Romeo Doubs or Wicks, I would prefer it to be Wicks if I were a Packer fan. I'm not sending the first as well. There comes a point where the asking price is too high, and DK Metcalf, he's just not a can't miss guy anymore. He's not. So if that's the price and it won't go, and Seattle won't budge from there, you happily let him go. He's not can't miss. But if you could get that pick down a bit, I mean, I don't know if Packers fans probably don't want to give up a 2nd, but if it was a 3rd rounder in Dontavian Wicks or Romeo Doubs in a 3rd, you're probably looking at doing that trade. If it's a 2nd, it's close, right? That's where it depends on your thoughts around DK Metcalf and whether or not he still has it. Because if he does, if you believe he does still have it, then trading a 2nd round pick and Dontavian Wicks for DK Metcalf could be game changing for Green Bay. You're getting a monster in DK Metcalf. And we've seen the effect that a monster receiver can have on quarterbacks. We don't need to go through the whole list, but everyone knows it. All these quarterbacks who've improved so much when they get their guy. Do you think he can be the guy for Jordan Love? There's a world, yeah. But I'm not giving up a first and one of those receivers because you're already down Christian Watson for most of the year. And we saw how ineffective that room was when all 4 guys weren't on the field, especially when 2 of them are out. So now you're 1 injury away from having only two guys. But here's the thing with DK Metcalf. If let's say that you trade Dontavian Wicks, you have Metcalf, Doubs, and Reed. If Romeo Doubs goes down or Jane Reed goes down, you still have that alpha number 1 on the field with a very strong number 2 option. That's what they've been missing this whole time. Because when someone goes down, and especially like last year where they had 2 guys going down, 3 guys going down, they didn't have that guy who could take over anymore. Like Jayden Reed's very, very good, but I think he needs other guys to take away attention. DK Metcalf, he's used to it most of his career until last year. He was the number one threat. So for the right price, DK Metcalf could be a really nice addition to Green Bay here. He's in the final year of a 3-year, $72 million deal. Again, last year, 66 catches, 992 yards, 5 touchdowns. A disappointing year for him. Fewest targets since he was a rookie. Like he's looking for a bounce back. And this just might be a situation where it makes sense for a do-over for him. And as far as Seattle goes, I know John Schneider was saying it would be news to him. But look, I said it earlier this offseason. Geno Smith is a fine quarterback. You know, no disrespect to Geno. I think his comeback has been unbelievable in his career. Most guys aren't able to do that, especially at his age. He made Seattle relevant. He keeps them afloat. They will always be in the playoff conversation with Geno Smith under center. If he comes back this year, they're going to be probably 9-8 and either barely sneak in or barely miss the playoffs and get blasted in round 1. That's who they are with Geno. And there is something about just getting in and having the shot. But I do think there's a pretty hard cap on Seattle's potential. You trade DK Metcalf, you're kind of starting that process of starting over a little bit. Save some money this year. You're not committing long-term to him anymore because who knows, you're probably not going to bring him back next year if you're starting over. JSN's already in his replacement. I think that it's an understandable move if you're the Seahawks, especially if you're able to get, one of these young Packer receivers and a draft pick, probably a high draft pick in return. It starts that rebuilding process that Seattle is very close to starting. They just haven't committed to it yet. And I get it because they have a very strong defense, with Mike McDonald. Their defense really came on over the course of the season. You feel like you're close, but sometimes you just have to look in the mirror and say, we're not there yet. And the best thing for Seattle to do, because they have so many young guys, get this process going now, as opposed to another year with Geno. Everyone gets a year older. Everyone's going to ask for more money. Do it now. Get yourself in the position where you could take advantage of these younger guys on smaller deals before you have to pay up, because that happens sooner than you think. So I think it makes sense for both teams here. Just finding the right compensation each way is the final straw here. And we'll get into more of the receiver rumors around Green Bay later when we all record tonight. I just wanted to dive into DK Metcalf because that was a story that popped up, and I went, I don't know if I'd like to see that. I don't know if I'd like to see Byron Murphy lining up against, and hopefully Byron Murphy, right? If it's not Byron Murphy, I don't know who it's going to be for the Vikings. Lining up with DK Metcalf, I've seen that guy take over games before, and it gets ugly pretty quick. So that could be a dangerous weapon headed to Green Bay. Okay, let's go on to the Vikings right here. It's looking more and more likely as this offseason goes on that Sam Darnold is not going to be returning to the Vikings, and I think it's the right decision. Of course, when you're in these situations, it's always a little difficult because we can't predict the future. All we can do is react to the evidence in front of us, and a lot of the evidence around Sam Darnold was a great season last year, and that he's a guy who can win a lot of football games in the NFL with the right system around him and the right coaches around him, and that's what he has in Minnesota. It's similar to the Kirk Cousins situation. It's very different in many ways, but there's similarities to the Kirk Cousins situation last year, where Kirk at 6-4 was playing some of the best football in his career before he tore his Achilles. So there's always risk in moving on from a quarterback that you believe puts you in a great position to win most weeks of the season. It's hard to win in the NFL. And I feel like I've been a little spoiled as a Vikings fan, amazingly spoiled as a Vikings fan, because we have been winning a lot. Over the past 3 years, the Vikings had a 13-4 season, a 14-3 season, and then Kirk was playing again some of the best football of his career when we were 6-4 before he tore his Achilles. So we've been doing a lot of winning. The Vikings have lost 10 games in the regular season the past 3 years. That's unbelievable. Or 11 games, maybe. Before Kirk got hurt, I'm sorry, because then it fell apart. So they've been winning a lot. And you want to keep that going. And bringing back Sam Darnold would probably keep that floor pretty high for this team. I know Sam imploded against the Lions and the Rams. I believe against most teams, because those are two, the Lions are playing with their hair on fire, and the Rams have one of the best young defensive lines in football. Most situations, I would expect Sam Darnold to play a lot better than that if he were to come back next year. At the same time, you look at the situation, you go, the Vikings believe in JJ McCarthy. Every single report that you see is that JJ McCarthy has convinced them he's their guy. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I'm not in Minneapolis. I've only seen the preseason games as well for JJ playing. But every report coming out and every comment from that coaching staff is that they believe JJ's the guy. He was intended to be the guy, and they want to make him the guy. That makes me think that Sam Darnold coming back on a multi-year deal is off the table. I know that the stories are continuing that the Vikings are interested. How much of that is the Vikings trying to drive his price up for a potential tag and trade, which also seems to be off the table, but every now and then you see reports that the Raiders are interested in it or someone else is, and Minnesota, of course, would want to try to get something back for a quarterback, right? You want to try and replenish that completely depleted drafts capital this year. So I understand why the Vikings are talking that up, but to me, it seems like JJ McCarthy's the guy. Now, if JJ's the guy, but he's not ready to go at the start of the season, which it also seems is on the table. This is such a weird situation because there's so many different avenues the Vikings can go down. Not even going to get into Aaron Rodgers today. That seems like it's not going to happen, but it's one of them. There's so many hypotheticals the Vikings could go down. The one that's seeming to gain more steam is Daniel Jones. And if you're a Vikings fan and you hear me say Daniel Jones is going to be our starting quarterback next season, you're probably sitting back in your car, sitting back at home and going, oh my God, do I really want to go through with this? Do I really want Daniel Jones? We saw that disaster in New York. I mean, guys, who does that sound like? A little bit like Sam Darnold, right? Last year. Sitting back in your chair going, oh God, are we really going with Sam Darnold here? That was a disaster in New York. And look what happened. Kevin O'Connell has shown that he can take a lot of these journeyman quarterbacks, these guys who have struggled in bad situations, and really bring out the best in them. Some of the best seasons of their career. You saw it for a little bit with Josh Dobbs, and he was a fine quarterback. You know, Josh Dobbs is a backup, but he had some moments with the Vikings there. You saw it for sure with Sam Darnold last year. I think you saw it with Kirk Cousins. I think you saw some of the best football of Kirk's career with KOC, and Kirk's not in that same conversation of these guys, but Daniel Jones is another one of these dudes who was in a terrible spot in New York. The Giants and the Jets are two of the losingest teams in the league over the last 5-6 years. I mean, they've been horrible. So much dysfunction, so much chaos. And at least Daniel Jones had one good year, right? There's a reason he got paid $160 million. Now, that was way too much. I think we all agree on that. But he was good that year. He was fine. I think, 15 touchdowns and 9 interceptions? He was fine. Shouldn't have paid him that much. Bad move from the Giants. And the Viking games, again, are the reason he got paid because he threw for 650 yards and whatever many touchdowns. They're unbelievable against the horrible Vikings defense that year. So before you get too upset about Daniel Jones, you need to think about the big picture here. He's not going to be the guy. Like this is where it gets tiring, and I'm totally with you, Vikings fans, where we're looking at this situation, we're saying, oh my gosh, can we just go after our guy? Can we just get this process over with? Because if you go back to when Kirk got hurt, that was half a season of trying to find the right journeyman. Last year, we bring in Darnold, journeyman. This year, we're talking about Daniel Jones. You just had enough. We want our guy. So why are we continuing this process? Let's go with JJ right now. Let's get right into it. I'm totally with you guys, and I want to get there too. I think the whole coaching staff, that's why they're going to let Darnold go. Everyone wants to get there. The Daniel Jones piece of this is a little different than Sam last year, and I'd be really surprised. I guess it's kind of similar because if Daniel comes out and has the year Sam had, then there are all these questions. But my guess is that they want JJ playing week 1 and that they're intending on him being able to go. But if you bring in Daniel Jones, you at least have a security blanket. And then you're going to let him battle it out with JJ over the course of the offseason. And if JJ's not in a spot where he's good with his knee, you at least can stay afloat. And then either A, Daniel Jones craps out and you put in JJ and give him reps, hopefully, or even earlier in the season, possibly, whenever he's good to go. Or DJ comes out and plays well. And this is where you're kind of a little bit like Darnold last year. But I think that the plan will be, I would be really surprised if we had these similar conversations of, let's sign Daniel Jones to a $50 million deal. I think they want JJ McCarthy. So you have some similarities in that. If DJ lights the world on fire, yeah, I guess you're forced into this situation of having to reevaluate whether or not he could be the guy. But my guess is this is more of a security blanket than the plan for Daniel Jones to be the guy the entire season. And look, there's nothing wrong with having a cheap contract for a veteran quarterback who's a better backup than most in the league while you give your guy time to recover. Like, there's no bad case scenario with Daniel Jones. There just really isn't, given where the Vikings are. Like if they let Darnold go, they're going with McCarthy. It's fine to have Daniel Jones on the team and play for a bit if JJ can't go. And the only bad situation is if he's so bad, right? Like so horrendously bad, and JJ can't recover in time, which I don't think is going to happen. So it should be fine. So don't freak out about Daniel Jones. He's not the plan, but he's a fine backup. And there's only a higher ceiling in that if he plays well, you continue to give JJ time to recover. Like the Vikings are not let's get this one thing clear. The Sam Darnold situation was a huge win for Minnesota. I know it ended really poorly, but this was a great win for us as a fan base. Like this situation of, should we sign the guy who took us 14-3 and had the best year of his career, or go with the first round rookie quarterback that we all believe in? This is a great option to have. It just depends on which side you believe in. And most people want to go with McCarthy because they think the upside is higher. This isn't a bad thing for the Vikings. There are quarterback rooms around the league. You're looking at the Steelers, you're looking at the Colts, you're looking at the Titans, you're looking at the Raiders, you're looking at the Browns, the Giants, the Jets, all these teams that are in quarterback hell. That's not the Vikings. Teams would die to be, I'll say that. Teams would kill. Yeah, right. Better word usage there. Teams would kill to be in the Vikings position. So I know it's a little frustrating not knowing what we're going to have next year at the moment, but we're going to know soon, and we're in a good situation with great players around whoever it's going to be. That's all I have to say about that. As far as, I saw that we talked to Cam Ward too. A lot of people were surprised that the Vikings sat down and interviewed Cam Ward. Like, what could this mean? Are they going to try and trade JJ McCarthy to one of the teams picking at the top of the draft and get Cam Ward and another haul for someone who thinks JJ would be the number one quarterback in this class? Like, what's going on here? Why even interview him? It's just being good at your job. Like, you should be ready for any situation. If someone does come and offer the mother load for JJ McCarthy, like, the Vikings need to be ready for that situation. I don't think they want to move on from JJ. I'd be really surprised. But if it does happen, right, have your research. Know what you think of Cam Ward. Know what the package would have to be. I think it's just Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi doing the right thing here. Think about your fantasy football drafts, right? This is what I was thinking of. For anyone who's in a fairly competitive league, when you go into your draft, no matter how many times you sit down and do mock drafts, there's always the chance that someone does something unpredictable, and it usually happens where now you have to kind of scramble if you're not prepared. The way that you're ready for that is by doing a little, I'm not talking like sit down all offseason, study fantasy football, but have an idea of who you like so that when that unpredictable thing happens, you can react appropriately to it and you're not panicking. So if someone does wind up calling, if the Giants do come calling on draft night and say, hey, we'll give you the number 3 pick in the draft, plus some extra stuff, plus some more draft capital for a team that already has none. Are you interested? The Vikings should have an answer. So I love that they interviewed Cam Ward. I think it's fun. I think it's the right decision for the team. Okay, last story here that I just want to address before closing up for today. Brandon Aiyuk is on the trade block. After the 49ers trade Deebo Samuel, John Lynch said that he's received calls about it, that they're always looking to get younger. It all sounded like Brandon Aiyuk is on the table here. And you have to remember, this is a team that was trying to trade Brandon Aiyuk last year before handing him the 4-year, $120 million extension. And then Brandon came out, had a disappointing season-ending injury in week 7. Just a bad year for the 49ers across the board. It really was horrible. He's 26 years old right now, coming off a season-ending injury. You don't want to be in that situation. And I'm seeing reports right now, or at least I saw one, hypothetical about the Bears going after Brandon Aiyuk. So I just want to talk about that real quick as far as Chicago goes here. The Bears going after Aiyuk just makes no sense to me, right? I know that you have Caleb Williams and you're trying to give him as many weapons as possible. You want him to succeed, but is that really the spot to target if you're the Chicago Bears. You have DJ Moore, you have Rome Odunze, you could fill in that third receiver spot nicely. You have a very clear problem in Chicago. It's the offensive line. Caleb was sacked 68 times, 16 more than CJ Stroud, who was second with 52 in the league. You have to shore up that line. I don't care how many weapons you get him. Look at the Super Bowl. Look at what happened to Patrick Mahomes when he had no time. It puts it in perspective a little, right? Caleb's running around, and he does need to get better at making quicker decisions because he's known for extending plays. Sometimes he puts himself in jeopardy. I'm just thinking about that Viking game in Chicago where the Bears had the crazy comeback. They get the ball in overtime, and Caleb takes a 15-yard sack, kills the drive. Vikings get the ball, win the game. He did things like that last year. He had a lot of immature moments. But as that comes back down to earth, you have to protect him. Otherwise, anyone in the league can get blown up if someone's in their face in a second or half a second. You got to shore up that interior of the offensive line. So that's what they're going to try to do. And I do know, let me see here. I'm trying to remember who, what's his name? So Trey Smith is off the table with the Chiefs, but the Falcons center, Drew Dahlman, that's who I was trying to remember. Drew Dahlman's right on the table right now. And now there's reports about Will Fries from the Colts or Aaron Banks from the 49ers. There are guys that the Bears can target in free agency to protect Caleb Williams better. And that's what they got to do. That's the place to invest your money. If they can get Brandon Aiyuk and make it work financially, yes, I think Brandon Aiyuk's an awesome receiver. He's one of the most underrated receivers in the league. But sometimes you do have to take a step back and say, what's truly best for this team? And what's truly best for the Bears is not to continue to add on to that arsenal of receivers, which is, the tempting thing to do. Right? Whenever a guy like Brandon Aiyuk's available and he's mentioned with your team, you do kind of have a little light in your eyes. Go, whoa, that would Brandon, Moore, Rome Odunze. Like, that's scary. But that's kind of, you were thinking the same thing with Keenan Allen last year. Like, things change. There's only one football to go around, and you can't protect your quarterback. So you got to invest your money in the right spot here. And then in the draft, with all the issues they have on the defensive line, this is one of the deepest defensive line drafts we've seen in a while. So you have a prime opportunity to go after both of your biggest areas of need on the lines and then go from there. I think it would be a mistake to invest heavily in a receiver coming off a major injury. He's just 26. Like, I don't want to hear people talking about Brandon Aiyuk like there's nothing left in the tank. He's not that old. And maybe that's me being a 26-year-old trying to defend 26-year-olds being old. But I just think that there's a very clear path here for the Chicago Bears getting back on the winning track, and that starts with making the right decisions. And that's like this is something that teams do when they get caught up in the moment. The winning teams make the right decisions for their franchise, and the Bears are trying to get on that path. I don't want to make it sound like Brandon Aiyuk is a horrible decision, but I don't think it's the right one for what the Bears want to become. Build up those lines. Give your guy some time because he's got weapons at the moment, and go from there. Look at the NFC North with the Vikings pass rushers with Aiden Hutchinson coming back. Green Bay is going to be targeting someone. You need to be able to protect your quarterback, and Brandon Aiyuk's going to cost a lot of money if you bring him in. Like, that's why the 49ers are trying to trade him. They were looking to trade him last year. They probably like Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall, which I would keep him if I were the 49ers because I like those two guys, but I think Brandon Aiyuk's the clear number one there. So maybe something else is going on, but maybe the injury is worse than we think, something like that. I don't know. But I would be surprised to see Brandon Aiyuk moved at this point in time. Maybe I'm being naive, but I'd be a little surprised. Okay, last but not least, the Lions here, and I don't have much on them because there's just really not much happening. Brad Holmes came out and said, we're probably not going to be able to get a Myles Garrett trade done. I don't think they're going to be able to trade for Max Crosby or Trey Hendrickson. I see Detroit's a really good football team that's going to continue to build up in the draft and add pieces. I haven't seen anything right now about the guys that they're going to be going after. A lot of it's probably going to be trying to re-sign some of the guys and keeping that core intact, and how they have extensions to do, things like that. So I'd be surprised to see anything massive come out of Detroit over the next few weeks. Like massive. I'm talking like superstar. But this is a team that really just needs to continue to do what they've been doing. And that's drafting the best player available in the draft, having those gritty guys, those guys who just want to win football games. continue to build on that culture. And I'm sure that there will be rumors coming out because Max Crosby and Myles Garrett to Detroit were rumors that were just a few weeks ago. But right now, as far as those rumors like, Aiyuk to Chicago or DK Metcalf to Green Bay, that's been a little quieter for Detroit. So I'm not going to try and make a story out of nothing. They're in a good spot. All right. Appreciate you guys listening to this episode. We'll be back tomorrow with the full crew. Can't wait to get into that. And remember to drop your mailbag questions in on the community post on YouTube. If you go to our channel homepage, it should say either posts or community. If you click on that, you'll see it right there. The open-ended format for you to leave questions. So see you soon.